You're listening to the All Systems Go podcast, the show that teaches you everything you need to know to put your business on autopilot. Learn how to deploy automated marketing and sales systems in your business the right way with your host, the professor of automation himself and founder of Automation Bridge, Chris Davis.
Welcome to the All Systems Go podcast. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, founder of Automation Bridge, an online publication for small business automation. In this episode, I want to discuss how do you hit your target audience with specific messaging that resonates to get them to take action. I call this target practice, but it's also referred to as segmentation. So what's the secret? What's the secret to segmentation or sending targeted messaging on a consistent basis? That's what we're going to cover in this episode. But before we get into it, I want to first and foremost thank everybody who has left a rating and review and encourage you to encourage someone else to do the same. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please make sure you go and subscribe to the All Systems Go podcast with Chris L. Davis. You can find this podcast in all main podcasting apps, mainly Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Make sure you subscribe. And while you're at it, please leave a 5-star rating and review. It is greatly appreciated and it helps get the word out for all of the small business owners and entrepreneurs that are looking to leverage automation in this new year. It's 2020, everybody, in this new year, the right way. So let's dive into the content here. And the topic of this episode is segmentation. And it's one of my favorite topics. And the reason being is because segmentation is really the secret sauce to email. It really is. And I say email just because this is a marketing automation podcast where we're talking about strategies and leveraging automated messaging to generate revenue, but it's not limited to email. The more targeted your messaging is, the more accurate, effective, and profitable, that's the word, and profitable your marketing as a whole is going to be. So let's start from the beginning and define segmentation. I define segmentation as the process of grouping your contacts by like attributes and or actions. So if we think about attributes are what defines the contact, right? What defines the person. If you did something, if you ran a mile, if you ran a marathon for a mile and got a badge that says, hey, first place, that is similar to an attribute that now exists on you. It's an achievement. It's an accomplishment that I can now look and group you by. Hey, all first place winners, come over here. So that's an attribute. And I want to draw a correlation between attributes and actions, because actions are what people do. So, of course, in the example of the marathon, you ran the marathon and came in first place. Now, what we need to know is, does the platform that we're using allow us to track these actions? And the reason why that's important is because actions convert to attributes. Okay, so you've done something, and based on my tracking of that behavior, it has now become an attribute, and it can exist in many ways. And we're going to talk about how attributes exist, how attributes and actions exist on the contact record. But if you think about it, attributes are a historical representation or value of information collected. That information comes from actions taken. I know what information to glean from those actions by the platform, the marketing automation system that I'm using that enables me to see the behavior and derive attributes from it. Okay, that's just the foundation, everybody. So if you're struggling with sending targeted messaging beyond the understanding of what segmentation is, which of course we're going to cover here and how to do it, you also need to look at your platform. Does your platform allow you to capture the amount of data in a way that allows you to segment at a very granular level. And the reason why that's important is because, as I mentioned earlier, segmentation is the secret sauce to email performance. And the reason why email is important is because it really is the foundation of online marketing when it pertains to sending messaging. It is still the top performing channel. And when I say top performing channel, I don't mean in isolation. Email always works in concert with other efforts to produce a result. Okay. But let's talk about why segmentation is key to your email producing results. And the main reason is that effective email sending requires specificity. Okay. If in fact, I'm going to change the word effective to profitable. Profitable email sending requires specificity. Gone are the days. Listen, gone are the spray and pray days, right? Where you have a big list, you just mail an offer, you cross your fingers and say, I hope people buy, right? Those days are gone. All right. You need to specify not only who the email is for, but the type of messaging that's going to resonate. Okay. So that's the specificity I'm talking about, is knowing exactly who your message is for and who you're sending it to. Both boxes have to be checked, right? Like, this messaging is for people who are interested in blah, blah, blah. Okay. When I look at my database, these are the people that fit that condition. Now I need to send targeted messaging to them. Okay. Now this is where the term target practice comes from. And the reason why I like it is because of the word practice. A lot of people think that you can create segmentation. It's a one-time deal. You're done. And it's like, yep, I got it. I've got my list segmented. And that may be true for that moment, but segmentation is living. You know, I talked about this in a previous episode where I talked about mistakeless marketing, and marketing is a living entity because the what's in it are people who are living. They're always changing. Trends are always changing because people are. So there go segmentation as a living entity as well. So practice lets us know we're always figuring it out. So when I say target practice, you're always practicing hitting your target. What is your target? Effective segmentation allows you to send messaging that achieves the specific thing you set forth. The more specific you are, the closer to the bullseye you will end up. That's your target. You know, your target. When you're sending messaging, I'm thinking, as I'm saying this, I'm envisioning an arrow, right? And the bullseye is your audience and the arrow is your messaging, right? And the closer to the bullseye, the more specific you are with your segmentation. The further out, the more broad you are. So we could look at 7 years ago, just emailing to a list. You know, the bullseye was huge then. It's just like, as long as you hit the board, you know, it was working. But now there's different layers. And, you know, a bullseye has multiple rings. If you're shooting messaging and it's hitting the outer ring, which means it's hitting more people, right? It's hitting more people. It's not going to be as effective. So you want your messaging. I would rather shoot multiple arrows that hit a bullseye than try to shoot one big arrow that hits anywhere on the board. And that really speaks to the past and the present. Again, just about 7 years ago, email marketing was very much, you know, a practice for the superior, right? Those ahead of the game in digital marketing. And just shooting an arrow and hitting anywhere on the board was fine, right? But as time has gone on, layers, rings have been added. So you really want to send targeted messaging to that specific audience. And you know you hit the bullseye. You know you hit the bullseye. One of the main differentiators, or I should say indicators, is revenue. That's the end. What are we sending emails for? right? Is to generate revenue. And let me park here for a second. The reason why you need to generate revenue with email, I'm talking about business owners. We're not talking about nonprofit. The reason why a business owner needs to generate revenue from email is because you're paying to send that email. So I don't know about you, but the law of business that I abide by is that business should pay for itself. Shout out to Tim Brenner. He was my financial advisor over a decade ago, last decade, matter of fact. He told me that advice and it rang true. It still rings true in my head. If I'm paying to send this email needs to generate some money. It needs to at minimum pay for itself. This also goes into my training in my masterclass where I talk about start, sustain, scale. Sustainability is the process of your business paying for itself. Okay, so email is a subset of that. It needs to generate revenue. You'll know, think of it, we're not shooting blindfolded, by the way. You will know if you're hitting your target by the revenue that's being generated. Okay, so when we talk about target practice, that's what I want you all to have in your mind and understand. And this is just foundational to segmentation. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through my approach to segmentation, and then I'm going to give you some key considerations so that you can forever. These considerations are beyond the platform. They're agnostic. You do these and you will be fine regardless of what platform you're using. All right. But we needed to understand that foundation of segmentation, why it's important and the role it plays with email. It provides, and not just email, I should say marketing. It provides specificity to your marketing. Specific marketing. When marketing is very specific, it not only disqualifies people, but the people it qualifies gets them to act fast. Okay. So I guess I should have said this is for mature marketers. If you're just starting out, anybody and anything, you're happy, right? You put a list up, your mom subscribes, you're like, I got a subscriber, right? Friends and family, you're like, I've got 30 people on my list. As you grow, as your marketing matures and you have more expectations, your expectations get closer to revenue instead of vanity metrics. What you'll want to do is move from broadly speaking to speaking in specifics. Okay. That's where segmentation comes in. And you use it, again, I'm using email as an example, but you use it across your entire marketing. Can you imagine sending a direct mailer that speaks specifically to an action somebody has taken that you logged on your website and or some event? Can you imagine the performance of that direct mailer than somebody who says, hey, or hey, first name, come in and give us a visit, right? Specificity is how you stand out, especially in a crowded market where anybody can sign up and start sending emails and messenger bots and, digital messaging is very cheap. So you need to make sure that you understand these principles so you can stand out for effectiveness of your marketing. All right. So when I talk about segmentation, we understand what it is, its role, and how it provides specificity to our marketing. Specific marketing allows us to hit our target more accurately, which will produce results, which the results that we're out for is revenue. I want to go through my approach to segmentation, and it's really a 3-step approach. And the key in every step is to understand that your platform is going to enable you to do this or limit you from doing this. So your platform is very key. Okay. You need to understand the capabilities of your platform. All right. So first off, you want to start with understanding the type of messaging you're going to be sending to your audience. Okay. This is going to prepare you for how you're going to configure your platform. And a lot of people, when they think about segmentation, they don't think about messaging, but segmentation is directly correlated with the type of messaging you're going to be sending out. Okay. This messaging is going to be derived from your lead magnet, your free offer. Your free offer is going to be derived from your product. So now we see segmentation does not exist if we do not clearly understand the end goal. What are we in business for? Am I selling shoes, selling widgets? Whatever that widget is, I need to derive from it something that I can give away for free. And then based on what I give away for free, I need to lead them to the product. This is my sliced bread approach, right? How I lead them to the product is consistent messaging. I need to know what that messaging is, because consistency is key. Okay. When it comes to segmentation and sending messaging in your marketing, it's got to be consistent. You don't want to be collecting groups of people that you don't have any clue what to send them. I see it all the time. The default weekly newsletter. That's the default. And I don't know about you. It is much harder than it looks to send a weekly email consistently, not only from a content creation standpoint. After about your 20th weekly email, you're like, okay, what do I send this week? Right. But from an execution standpoint as well. So when I say start to understand the type of messaging, you need to understand what you have to offer and who it's for. We didn't mention your avatar. You have to have done an avatar exercise. You have to identify who the ideal customer profile is, their pains, their desires, right? Their position, what they're looking for right now, alternatives. You've really gone through that. So you understand that what you have to offer, they be interested in. And then you know what type of messaging you're going to be sending on a consistent basis to get them to take the final action, which is to purchase your product. Okay. So when I understand the type of messaging I'm going to send, the frequency that starts to shape, I can start get an idea of the type of segments to create. Right. So a basic example is if I'm a CPA or, tax advisor, and I want to give you the top 10 mistakes that small business owners make when it comes to properly managing and tracking their taxes. Right when I say that, I need to know people are not going to download that resource or grab that resource and immediately take action. So what other type of messaging do I want to send out? Because that type of messaging is going to differentiate. You say, hey, I want to send messaging to people who are an S Corp and people who are an LLC. Well, look at that. We have our first segment, everybody. Right? My entire database is business owners, but I want to send a different type of messaging to people who have an S Corp and people who have an LLC for tax purposes. Right? So you see the connection with messaging and segmenting. It starts with your messaging. You have to be clear on the messaging that you're going to send to get them to buy your product. All right. Again, this is the profit pathway that we're talking about. They grab a free offer, and what is that path to get to the product? All right. Segmentation is key to that, and it starts with the type of messaging you're going to send. So that's the first consideration. All right. My first consideration is understanding what type of messaging. Then your second thing that you need to identify is what type of information are you going to capture? What type of information do you need along this pathway, right? What type of information do you need to collect to ensure that as they propagate through your systems, remember the significant 6, as they propagate through these systems, your messaging, the specificity of your messaging should be increasing. Okay. The further along the pathway they are, the more specific you should be speaking. So what does that mean? I've just put you off the hook, everybody. Stop it. Okay. Let's virtual hand slap everybody. Your hands in the cookie jar. Hey, stop doing that. Get your hand out of that. You have to stop trying to collect a person's entire biography at the first point of capture. I see this far too often where people are trying to capture 10 questions, You got to fill out an assessment just to get in. And I see it more in the B2B space, right? That I hate those forms. A lot of times they ask for like 5 to 10 questions, and then they don't even use it intelligently. So, which makes me, oh man, this is good. You can tell I am really passionate about segmentation because, again, it's the secret sauce to marketing. Don't ask for information you're not going to use. Do not request information if you're not going to use it intelligently. Don't ask for, hey, how many years have you been in business? If later on, maybe in person or on the phone, you're going to ask them, so how long have you been in business? Do not collect information you're not going to use. It makes you look unintelligent, and it destroys trust that good marketing has built up. I don't know about you, but medical offices are notorious for this. You go there, you fill out all your information on an iPad, and then you see the doctor or the practitioner, and they will ask you the exact same questions that you just filled out. And some of it is like, yeah, I get it if you want to make sure that I'm the same person. But a lot of times they're writing the information again. It's like, are your systems not synced up? Did you not see that I checked the box that I'm allergic to these 3 things? Why are you asking me what I'm allergic to and then checking boxes as if I didn't just check them in the waiting room? But we do that all the time in marketing. We'll ask for information because we don't know what information we need to collect to send targeted messaging. So we just start asking for information. Monkey see, monkey do, blind leads to blind. Hey, they're asking for this, so I'm going to ask for that. Right? So what type of information do you need to capture? And remember, we're not trying to capture all of the information up front. We're going to capture it along the path. Okay? But you have to be clear with what information you need, because you can start to use your web assets strategically, right? There's one way for somebody to tell you who they are is by filling out a form. And let me tell you this, you're around the internet enough, you realize that people falsify information on forms all the time, especially if they think that if they answer something a certain way, it's going to get them further and closer to you. They'll give you the answer that they think you're looking for instead of the true answer in their business. So that's one way to capture information. But the other way to capture information is their behavior, right? You need to be able to track their behavior. Are they attending events? Are they visiting web pages? Are they in a group, on social media? Are they engaging, right? All of those actions give you a full picture of what they're doing, their behavior, because you need to be strategic with how you're using your web real estate to capture information once you identify what information you need to capture. Now, again, your platform will limit you. Some platforms have very robust website tracking, which means I can put the tracking script across all my web pages and see which ones you're visiting. Oh, you're reading a lot of articles about S Corps. So though I didn't collect that information up front, since you've read 10 articles for S Corps, you're either an S Corp or you're interested in information about S Corps, right? I'm in the same tax advisor example that I started with, right? So we need to understand the information that we need to collect. We know that we're not trying to collect everything up front. We have a system that allows us to, as they navigate down the pathway, our profit pathway, we're collecting information not only from forms, but from their actions, right? So your platform's limitation here will determine how close you can get to the bullseye. All right. MailChimp. Should I name names? All right, I'm going to name names. MailChimp, subpar segmentation. I like how they updated their platform to audiences. Now it's not lists, it's audiences. So I can see them trying to make shifts. But right now it's custom field based. They have tags, but you can't speak across audiences. Though they changed the name from list to audiences, it still performs like lists. So if you're in 2 audiences, a person is paying for you twice. Second is I can't control the messaging that I'm sending between audiences, so you don't get duplicate messaging. And there's still a lack of dynamic control. I'm going to speak about dynamic segments in a minute, but I will say MailChimp is getting closer to true segmentation. But website tracking, integrations, all of that are other things that I think of when I look at MailChimp. They don't have great website tracking. So that lets me know that I got a blind spot when it comes to behavior. GetResponse the same way. GetResponse is better at how to create segments, but they fall short in being able to monitor other actions. Their workflow builder, get out of here. I'm not going to, I am. Their workflow builder to me is rudimentary at best. It's entry level. It does not allow you the full flexibility of a true marketing automation platform. And since they're calling themselves marketing automation, you have to compare them to the Infusionsoft, the Entreports, the Active Campaigns. When you look at their workflow builder, it's at the bottom. It really is. I get it if you're an email marketer just going to get some more advanced email automation. GetResponse is great. But if you're looking for full marketing automation, no, you're not going to get it in GetResponse. But I appreciate how they handle segments. In fact, I'm a longtime user of GetResponse. I still have a GetResponse account. I still use my GetResponse account. They are the first platform that I feel handled segmentation across lists the best. The limitation is the information that you could capture. So it's very hard. It's very hard to capture information beyond a custom field or just an email address. All right, those are just a couple. I'm not going to go down the line with every platform, but I say that to let you know that your platform is going to limit you. When I look at other platforms that do have web tracking, Active Campaign has great web tracking. Infusionsoft, get out of here. Their web tracking, again, rudimentary at best, better than MailChimp, and GetResponse nowhere near Active Campaigns. It's going to limit you. It's going to limit you at what information you can capture and segment based on. Because along with the information you're capturing, your platform also needs to make that information available for you to easily create segments. Okay? So that's key. And when I say Active Campaign is great at collecting, information with web tracking other ways, there still is a lot of work to be done collectively with how segments are handled. I have to give HubSpot credit here. Their smart lists is probably the best iteration of handling dynamic segments that I've ever seen. Let me just say segmentation. It really is easy to set up, easy to use, easy to manage. They get it. I'll give HubSpot the badge there. All right. So we have step one. My approach is understanding the type of messaging. Step two is determining the information you need to collect. And lastly is you want to identify how the information will be stored. This is where tags versus lists versus custom fields comes into play. Okay. Which one do you use? Well, the answer is it's all in your platform. Right? Infusionsoft does not have lists. It's just one database separated by tags and custom fields. So you're going to be tag heavy in Infusionsoft. Active Campaign has list, tags, custom fields. You're going to be using a combination of all three, which can be confusing depending on, the type of savvy you are. You're like, should I use lists? Should I use tags? Right? I have a rule for the three. In fact, we're going to go a little longer on this podcast, just so you know. Let me tell you my rule. When I look at lists are the most broad type of communication you could send. Somebody's on a list. I don't really know you that well to send targeted messaging. What I need is more specificity. So that specificity comes from tags or custom fields, right? So the difference between tags and custom fields is I look at tags as more quickly, more flexible, right? That I can easily apply a tag and take it away. It doesn't permanently exist. It's there primarily for a function or to represent something for a time. Okay. Custom fields, I look at that. That's like permanent data. It changes very slowly. Where tags can change quickly, custom fields are more permanent. Think of a last name as a custom field. You can change it, not easily. Right. So when you're looking at those three, it all depends on your platform. Okay. But the thing that I want to tell you to do is plan this stuff out. How are you going to store it? Plan that outside of the platform. I use Airtable, everybody. Airtable, I know some people use spreadsheets. At Lead Pages, we use Google Sheets, where we had all of the segments defined in a spreadsheet, every single one, and it listed the tags that made up that segment, right? If somebody has these tags, they're now in this segment. I like to use Airtable. It's just a little easier to visualize, but I'll have all of the information that I'm capturing. And then in another column, I'll say how I'm storing it, whether I'm storing it as a custom field or whether I'm storing it as a tag or whether it's just list based, right? Usually it's custom field or a tag. And I want to differentiate, right? I want to know that. I want to see all my custom field values and all of my tags, because again, this is my approach. Once I have these 3 steps done, I can now execute in the platform. Okay. I can now go into the platform and prepare the platform. And that brings me to my close. And I want to give you all these considerations to keep in mind. And I have 5 of them. But when it comes to executing in your platform, you have to understand this with respect to segmentation. Okay. One is, you really need to understand how your platform handles segments. Again, HubSpot gets the key here. How do they handle it? How do you access them? I'll tell you what, at the time of recording this is at the top of the new year, figuring out how to access your segments in ActiveCampaign, it's like a mystery. Is one of the things that when I was doing the workshops, I had to spend the most time explaining, because people didn't know, oh, I go to list and I click this drop down, then I click segments. Oh, those little boxes are my segments, right? They didn't know how to access them. They didn't know how to manage them. They didn't know how to create them easily. So though ActiveCampaign handles segments in a very powerful way, the process of knowing how to do it is difficult, right? So that's going to factor in to your ability. Now, there's a specific way that I handle segments in ActiveCampaign. It's extremely powerful. We'll save that for another time, or perhaps if you want to get some insight on that, I do have, my mentorship program and mastermind for that. But there is a way to, once you know the platform, you can unlock that ability. Infusionsoft, how they handle segments, save searches, right? And it's all tag based and custom field based. When I was saving segments in Infusionsoft at Lead Pages, it was like a riddle. They've done this, but not this, have this field, not that field, because those are the only ways, so you're going to be very tag heavy in Infusionsoft, very tag heavy. What else? HubSpot, we mentioned smart lists versus they're just static lists. I would recommend you use smart lists as much as possible. And what are we looking for? One of the considerations is, another one is not only how they handle it in terms of how they're built and how they're managed, segments that is, but also are they dynamically populated? We're in a day and age now, if your platform is not dynamically populating segments, you shouldn't be using it. Okay, this is a rule that I'm giving you. You should not be using it. What does dynamically populating a segment mean? It means once I've done the work, I know my messaging, I know the information, and I know how it's stored, I can start creating that criteria in my platform. So if I say, hey, look, I have to have your email address in the last 30, I had to have captured your email address in the last 30 days, and you have to have this interest tag. I can create that criteria. And then as my marketing is executed, as people enter my database and meet that criteria, they're automatically added to that segment. And when they no longer meet that criteria, they're automatically removed from that segment. That's dynamic segmentation. You have to do that because it makes targeted sending that much easier. Okay. So, which brings me to my third consideration is that you can build these segments based on the criteria that you create before you even generate leads. You can prepare the platform. Now, many of you will already be in motion. You already have the platform going. You're going to need to do some, take a couple steps back and do this work. All good. I'm just letting you know that if you do my approach up front, and as your marketing goes on, it's easier to modify and adjust. Whereas if you just get started and you got to go back, oh, what are my segments? I've done it. That's the most common case. So people have to go back retroactively and identify those segments. And then from that point on going forward, people kind of fall into those buckets. But you can do this. You can configure your segments without generating leads. There, again, it's like preparing the rooms. So when people enter in, they know exactly what room to go into. And when they go into that room, you know exactly what type of information or messaging you're going to send them. So depending on what room you're in, you're going to hear a different message from the PA speaker, right? You've got all this prepared. Okay. Another one is something that people often overlook, and it's how does the platform handle unsubscribes? Okay. That's going to determine how you segment. Now, and you need to know this. Trust, if there's some time to be spent to learn, you need to know this. Some platforms it's easier than others. HubSpot has a managing preferences. Get Response, I think they do a really good job with managing your list and your segments. And it gets a bit confusing when you offer the three, like list tags and custom fields, because now I need to know that if depending on how I have my segment built and you click unsubscribe, I need to know what the impacts of that is. Right. And when one of the most common things that we saw at ActiveCampaign, or I should say I saw at ActiveCampaign, was if somebody was on multiple lists, that person did not know they were on multiple lists. So when they selected unsubscribe, they were only unsubscribed from one list, but they were getting mailing from other lists. This is a email marketing, more of an email marketing, a blind spot. And what you need to know is when someone clicks unsubscribe, what is their intention? Right? When they say, hey, no longer send me information. And then how are you mirroring that intention with your segments on the back end? So how your platform handles unsubscribes is going to determine how you store or configure your segments. I'll tell you right now, again, in ActiveCampaign, if you're in an automation that is not started by somebody joining a list and they hit unsubscribe, they can be removed from every list in your account. You need to know that, right? That's going to determine how you build your database, how you segment your database, right? And lastly, you need to consider third-party integrations. I am on the record for saying I like to keep my list at a minimum, and I like to use tags and custom fields to do my segmentation. It's easier for me. I understand how to do it in all platforms. It just helps me be more targeted with my sending. However, there are times where integration is going to require that you integrate at a list level or a tag level. I ideally like my integrations to integrate at a form level because forms are very flexible. You submit a form, I can add you to whatever list, apply tags or whatnot. But a lot of times, third-party integrations will integrate at the list and or tag level. If it's at the list level, you're going to have multiple lists, everybody. There's no way around it. You know, if it's at the tag level, there's some ways that you can work around it, but you know, there's probably a key indicator you're going to have multiple lists if it's at a tag level as well, depending on how you handle it. But again, for me, if I can submit a form or add them directly to an automation or campaign from the third-party integration, I'm golden. Because then it can fit my existing structure. You know, I can keep my list at a minimum, but you have to keep that consideration in mind. So let me repeat those considerations real quick. First is how your platform handles the building and managing of segments. The other is how does your platform dynamically populate segments? The third is building your segments before lead generation. Okay. This is part of your prepping the platform. Fourth is how unsubscribes are handled. And fifth is third-party integrations. How they integrate with your platform is going to determine how the contact is going to come in and how you need to store it. All right. And there's strategies for all of these. Segmentate. I hope with this episode, what you've learned is just how many considerations go into segmentation. It may be a little overwhelming. However, once you have your segmentation strategy down, you are golden. There is nothing greater than sending a targeted messaging that you know beforehand is going to do exactly what you need it to do. There's no greater feeling. And that's the feeling that I want to give you all. So tell me this, who's that one person that needed to hear this? Who's that one person when you're thinking like, oh my gosh, this is what I mean. This, we're trying to figure out tags, lists, custom fields, and let's just listen to this. Or maybe you haven't started, or that person is going to start like, hey, look, before you sign up, listen to this podcast. Make sure your platform can do this, right? Who's that one person? Do me a favor, share this podcast with them. Help them out. It is so hard. It is, listen, business is dynamic in itself. The more preparation and planning you can do up front to alleviate some of that on the back end, the better. So who's that person? And if you found value in this, please share it with more than that person and make sure that you're subscribed. Okay. Make sure you subscribe and leave a 5-star rating in Apple Podcasts or iTunes. That's the best way that you can tell me thank you. All right. So for this episode and all other podcast episodes, you can find them as well as their show notes at automationbridge.com/podcast. I hope you found tremendous value in this episode. My apologies for going a little over, but I really needed you to understand these segmentation principles. So until next episode, my friends, automate responsibly.